Hey, it's Doris with Audiobooks, and I'm here to talk about the rest of the books that I read in July. Now, I'm going to leave you hanging yet another day about my 30 books in 30 days challenge. I mean, unless you've seen my vlog, and then, sorry for the chatting in the background, my kids gaming, and Anyway, gonna leave you hanging. I'm just gonna talk about a few books, a little wrap up here, and then my TBR talk, I will talk about the statistics, if you will. Anyway, let's just jump right in. So I have first up a couple books that I'm not gonna talk about. The Lori Moore Terrific Mother is one that Sean and I are working on a video collaboration of, and I need to get that done today. I went back to school on Monday and I'm behind in life already. And also Happiness by Aminata Forna. I have gushed about this enthusiastically in my BookTube Prize semifinal round, so you can check that out if you're interested. But I adore this book. It made me extremely happy. I think it is brilliant. Epitome of a Doris book right there. But yes, definitely check out my BookTube Prize semifinal wrap-up if you're interested in hearing more. So then the books that I am going to talk about, I have two books written in verse, let's say. This one is the Firefighter Fly Letters by Margarita Engel. I intend to read all of Margarita Engel's works. I just adore her writing. A lot of them are set in Cuba, but they're not even all Hispanic. There's one about the Zoot Suit riots that I want to get next, maybe. They're all looking at important topics in history, dealing with discrimination and prejudice and fighting against it. This one is really intriguing. It's set in Cuba. It's a Swedish woman who tells her dad, no, I'm not going to get married. I'm just going to travel the world for the rest of my life, basically. And she fights for the suffragette movement. And this is told from four perspectives. There's the woman herself. What is her name? Cecilia, maybe? I forget. No, Cecilia is the other one. The slave narrative. Elena is the daughter of the rich, Frederica it is. Sorry. Frederica is the Swedish woman, the suffragette that comes to Cuba to, just write about it, kind of a journalist perspective. And she's staying with a wealthy Cuban plantation owner. And so you get his daughter, Elena's perspective, who's also expected to marry soon. I think she's 13 or 14 when this book opens, and they're working on her hope chest. I kind of hate that term. Anyway, then you have Cecilia, who is the slave, but she has an affinity for language, and her master has trained her to be a translator, so she's translating for Frederica. And you also get a couple little clips from Benny, who is Cecilia's husband. Cecilia is currently pregnant in this novel, and this is just gorgeous. If you are into free verse narratives, this is a really beautiful, her writing is gorgeous. Silver People, which was the one on the Panama Canal, and there's one about a lion. I don't know. All of her works are beautiful. Check them out. And then this other one, another Brooklyn by Jacqueline Woodson. This is another author that I intend to read all of her works. This is my third of her as well. Brown Girl Dreaming is her, I think, really popular book. It is free verse, middle grades. This one, however, I'm having trouble labeling it. So It's not free verse. However, I think it is perhaps prose poetry. It's very poetic. So if you're not into poetry, this might not be the type of narrative for you, but I found it extremely gorgeous. This one focuses on a family, the dad and two kids that moved from Tennessee, rural Tennessee, back to New York City, where the dad is from, how he tries to hold on to them and keep them close because he knows the city is dangerous, but he ends up having to let them roam free. And it centers mostly around the daughter and three really close friendships that she makes there. So you get all of those storylines, and it deals with really difficult topics. It touches on obviously poverty, drugs, rape, teen pregnancy, but everything very, very briefly. It's a tiny book, and written sparsely. And you're teased along about what's happened in the family and why they moved. And yeah, I'll read all Jacqueline Woodson as well. The other thing that I'm not quite sure about is what age level it is. So it's told somewhat as a flashback from the perspective of the main character, who is 35 when she's telling it, but it really focuses on the teenage girls, but it's really, hard-hitting topics, but teenagers deal with those things. So I checked on Goodreads. It is labeled as YA, so I would say it's kind of on the border depending on what you like to read. You could see it as an adult story told from a young protagonist's perspective, or a really mature YA. I don't know. Really good. Really good. Okay, and then I have finally gotten to Wade in the Water by Tracy K. Smith. This won the National Book Award, I believe, a couple years ago, and she was the prior Poet Laureate of the United States. The current one is something Harjo. So I want to get her poetry collection next. She's got one coming out soon. I really enjoyed this a great deal. This is almost a snapshot of the Black perspective, just real brief timeline snapshot in poetic form. It's really gorgeous. Some of the poems are really hard to understand. They're going to take some time to read through them multiple times and sink into what she's communicating. Others are very simple and out there. There's so many different forms, just standard poetry, I guess. I'm not a poetry professor, obviously, but she's got some that are really cool. There's some erasure poems where she's taken a text and deleted words and just left a few remaining to create the poems. And one of those is based on the Declaration of Independence, and the other one is based on some letters from a white Presbyterian minister and his family as he's deciding whether he should become an abolitionist. Spoiler alert, he doesn't, and he ends up becoming a missionary but keeping his slaves. So and then there's another poetry set that's really neat that is she's just taken different lines from a variety of letters written by Black soldiers in the Civil War, and written home and fighting for their rights. As they come home, they fought for the Union and should get their rights as soldiers when they come back, their pay and whatnot, and they're not getting it. So really neat. And it's just this timeline of all these high points in history. The Black Panther movement, I believe there's one of those, I think. I gotta read it again, obviously. I think it's one that you need to spend time with, but just really gorgeous, really gorgeous. I'm glad that I finally got that. Thank you, Book Outlet. Another new release, this just came out in July, is George Takei's They Called Us Enemy. And this is illustrated by, is it Isinger or Scott Becker? Or that's the team. Here they are. You know, illustrator, writer, let's see. Isinger, I believe, is the illustrator. Becker is the illustrator. Isinger is the director. And Scott is, I think, one of the writers. Yes. So this is, George Takei was 4 years old when his family was taken to these, the Japanese camps during World War II. So this is his perspective. It's a memoir written in graphic novel form, and it's interspersed with moments from modern times, like his TED Talks. So it very much reminds me, you know, his time on Star Trek. It very much reminds me of March, the graphic novel series by John Lewis, his memoir. So highly recommend if you enjoyed that, or just if you're interested in the Japanese internment camps. I love graphic novels written about history, and this is a really good one. Okay, and then I have a DNF. A Kind of Freedom by Margaret Wilkerson Sexton. Yeah. This started out super cute. It's written, it's in New Orleans, an African-American family, right before World War II, I think. It's one of the wars, yes. And it just was really sweet with this girl who is from a more privileged Black family in the community, and a guy who is trying to get into medical school and trying to make something of himself, and they meet, and you know, there's a sister, and it's just like their relationship with the sister. I loved it. I love the opening pages, and I thought it was so nice, like one of those modern cozy classics, but just from an African-American perspective that, you know, you don't see much of that. And then it went to the next time frame, which is from, you know, the daughter of that couple's perspective, and you know, her life wasn't as cozy. And that's understandable to show the trajectory there. But then it went to her son's perspective, who had been imprisoned for marijuana charges for about 3 months, I believe. And, you know, coming home, he got his buddy to come pick him up. And, you know, instead of going to see his mother, or, you know, the mother of his upcoming child, he goes to see a woman that he's been talking to while in, you know, he's fairly young, yeah, for sex, I guess. And then, you know, one of her other guys shows up, and they have a fight. And I did like Mama Moo Moo when she came in and, you know, told him how it was. That was the girl's mother. But I just felt like I had whiplash, okay? It went from cozy sweetness to this hot mess, you know, within a few pages. I only read 85 pages of the book total. Oh, well, I just skipped back to the end and read the last 15 to see how it ended, because I was invested enough to want to read the ending, but yeah, it wasn't my favorite. So I didn't finish it. Anyway, and now we're going into potentially unpopular opinion territory. Whew, with classics and modern classics. Oh my goodness. So just briefly, I finished Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. This was the last one that I needed to read to finish her 6 completed published works. And I also am not a Jane Austen professor, so take that with a grain of salt. Just an amateur reader here. I have heard that this is like one of the first books she wrote of the 6, but one of the last published, and she sold it to a publisher for, I think it was £10 at the time, and it was never published, and her brother, I think, bought it back and got it published. And she wrote something, in the foreword or the end where she was talking about she didn't know why they would have held it and not published it after paying that much for it. Yeah. Anyway, this is cute. It's cute. It's just a girl. She's 17. A well-off couple in her community invite her to go to Bath with them as a companion and stay for a month or 2 or however long it is you stay. And she meets a good friend there, and then she meets another good friend and that good friend's brother, and it's really cute. It really read like a YA novel, which there's nothing wrong with that. And it read like a debut novel. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying it did not feel up to the caliber of the other works to me. It was just like really cutesy all the way through, and there wasn't that romantic tension that Jane Austen is really good about creating. It was just like this young girl and her first crush, and then suddenly everything works out and happily ever after. So yeah, I mean, it was cute and I enjoyed reading it, but it was a little bit slower paced at times, and it just didn't have that depth to me. Anyway, so cute. That's why I kept saying cute. That's just all I got. And then finally, To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. So I started reading this and I got about 25 pages in. And I was just having trouble just getting engaged and getting connected and finding the rhythm of the story. So I was talking to Sean, the book maniac, about it, and he suggested that I listen to it on audio and suggested a specific narrator. Sorry, I don't remember who that might be. I will try to link it below. So I did, and it was better. It was a really good narrator, and I did get more into the flow of the story that way. I still struggled, and not so much with understanding, but just engaging. So I finally looked up the Spark Notes summary and read that, and so the thing is, there's some really beautiful thoughts in here about marriage and the roles of men and women in society, and even, briefly touching on just war and life in general. The book is immensely quotable. It's just, I would say 50% of it would make amazing quotes. Probably it's all out there, on people's walls and in journals and whatnot. And I love beautiful language like that. I love a good quotable book, but And luckily it wasn't very long. But this one was just, it just seemed like it was almost too much of that. So it was just all of these beautiful, well-phrased thoughts that she'd had, just connected with this plot that wasn't much of. Anyway, it's centered around the family and their guests staying at this home in the, is it the Hebrides? Islands off the coast of England, I believe, something to that effect. Sorry, I'm not a geography professor either today. But yeah, the boy wants to go see the lighthouse. The mom wants to take him there. It never works out. They blame the dad. You know, and there's this artist and there's this other guy and there's all these people, and they all keep saying profound things and thinking profound things. And yeah, it does move on. It flashes into the future, like into 3 chunks. But anyway, read it if you're interested, and don't listen to me because I obviously don't know what I'm talking about. I didn't connect. Anyway, but I still have high hopes. I'm going to try Mrs. Dalloway next time and see how that goes. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I will be back soon. Bye.